Hey everyone, Matt here from Doctor Running, and today we're going to do a comparison review, or should I upgrade episode, of the Saucony Endorphin Elite 2 versus Saucony Endorphin Elite 1. Now, I've been drooling over the Endorphin Elite 2 for a long time. Saucony made it very briefly available to the public many months ago, I believe, to be able to provide a pair for one of their elite athletes in the Paris Olympics. Someone please correct me if that's wrong. I obviously missed that initial release. Very, very lucky that Saucony was nice enough to send us a pair, and I immediately start getting miles. In fact, the second I got it, I took it, put it on, and went and ran a half mile in it. It is the bounciest and most insane thing I put on my foot thus far, which is both good in some ways and also not great in other ways for someone like myself. And it is pretty much the polar opposite of what version 1 is. So for that reason, I really want this review to help you figure out, hey, is the Saucony Endorphin Elite 2 something you should be interested in? If this is something like me that you were like geeking out about, or if you were having the version 1, should you consider getting another pair of version 1 or upgrading to version 2? So as always, let's start off with specs. I did my own measurements in my men's size 10 for each one of these. The Saucony Endorphin Elite 1 is coming in at 7.6 ounces for men's size 10, or about like 216 grams. The Elite 2 is coming in at 220 grams, or about 7.7 ounces in my size 10. So a tiny, minuscule weight increase over in version 2. The stack heights are supposed to be exactly the same, 39.5 in the heel, 31.5 in the forefoot for an 8mm drop. And that's about where it feels like, although version 2 feels a lot lower because it has a way more insanely soft foam. So there's the Power Run HD, which was really new in version 1, which actually felt fairly firm and snappy for how much stack height is. Obviously, it's very, very well cushioned, but it's just a little bit firmer, snappier ride than I think a lot of us were expecting, which also helped it feel a little bit more stable, and for me, work a little bit better at short distance. I did a ton of 5Ks, 10Ks in this shoe. I haven't done any longer races recently, but if I did, I've done a long run in this shoe, like 14 miles at an up-tempo pace, and this actually worked really well. So I think this would be the preference. However, version 2 has the exact opposite. The Incredi-Run foam is the softest and bounciest thing I have ever put on my foot. It doesn't feel as snappy, although these both have carbon fiber plates. The way softer foam seems to transition much easier, and a lot of the propulsion just comes from that crazy bounce you got to figure out how to use, as opposed to the really snappy feel, which made the Endorphin Elite 1 feel much stiffer. I know some people did not work well with the forefoot because it felt so snappy and stiff. Certain people didn't like it. I loved it. If that was too aggressive for you, version 2 is going to feel better. And if you just wanted that really insane bounce that makes even the Alpha Fly feel a little bit firm, Incredi-Run in version 2 is probably going to be the better option. Now, because of those big differences in feel, it makes their function really different. I've used the Endorphin Elite 1 for, like I said, lots of shorter races. It's done very, very well for tempo runs in shorter intervals where that snappiness really, really pays off. That's really different in version 2. I've already done a tempo run, an easy run, and a track workout. And I felt the track workout where I was doing 400, 800s, I was really struggling to get this to turn over. The bounce is really, really nice, but part of it's also this is not stable, which I'll mention in a second. The foam just doesn't respond as quick as something that's a little bit more firm and more aggressive. Whereas when I took it on the tempo run, that's where it really shines. So I think a lot of people might find this works a little bit better for shorter distances, like half marathon and below, unless you like something firmer. Version 2 is going to work as that long distance racer, half marathon and above, for those that want the bounciest ride and have really stable mechanics. So bouncier and works better the longer you go. Now, that bounciness also makes this shoe incredibly unstable. Turning is not fun in this shoe. Yes, there are sidewalls. The sole is a little bit more narrow, especially the midfoot. But because of that bounciness and softness, it is really wobbly. I can't really run longer than about 7 or 8 miles in this shoe. Whereas the Endorphin Elite, I've taken up to it's like 14, 15 miles. So if you have stability needs, this version 2 is not going to be an option. Where if you need a little bit more guidance stability, version 1 is going to be the big winner of the two of them because of the slightly firmer ride. The sidewalls are more prominent, whereas there are sidewalls here, but they just collapse because the foam's so soft. So if you're sensitive, however, this is going to be the best option if you really, really have neutral mechanics, and make sure you have neutral mechanics if you want to use this for longer stuff. Speaking of which, even though this is softer, the durability is actually a little better. Now, I do have 50 miles on version 1, and I am starting to see some wear there. I've got 20 miles on this pair, and I'm not seeing any wear at all, and that's because the outsole is a little bit more thicker, so I'm expecting this to be a teeny bit more durable, but the traction's exactly the same. Saucony seems to struggle with anything any kind of surface that's slippery. I've really had trouble with that in version 1. Version 2 is a teeny bit better, but really stick to drier, non-aggressive roads if you want to use either one of these things. Finally, the upper is also different. Version 1, low volume, but fairly wide. So if you have a wider foot, this shoe worked really well. I always found the toe box really comfortable. Version 2 gets more snug. So the toe guard up here is actually really firm and narrows up the forefoot a little bit low volume up front, but then here there's a one-piece upper. The tongue is not separate, and it's got a little more volume, which is great, because if you have a little more midfoot volume, you want that, it's awesome. But if you need to cinch that down like I do, it kind of makes it fold on itself, so make sure that's sitting flat. But again, a little bit more snug / narrow in the forefoot here. Midfoot opens up just a little bit. Heel is fairly similar, where it's just, normal to a little bit wide, and part of that's because the heel counter is so flexible. If you have any heel sensitivities, this might be one of the best racing shoes on the market for that, because there's no counter. It still wraps really well. It's fairly secure. You are going to need to lock that heel down a little bit. I also do appreciate that there is an extra lace here that you can use to lace lock if you need that. That was here in version 1 as well, but it's a little more loop there, so you can still do that. I know a lot of racing shoes don't do that, but it's a little bit more snug over here with a little bit more volume, where version 1 is a little bit lower volume, but a little bit wider. So opposites in a lot of different ways. I'm still going to keep getting miles in this shoe, but it's not going to be a shoe that's going to work really well for someone like me that has stability needs or needs something just a teeny bit firmer. But if you want the most bouncy thing on the market, an incredible ride, at least try this shoe, because it is pretty cool, but it's not going to be something that's going to work for someone like me. Whereas if I'm going to race in one of these, I'm still going to be picking version 1, unless somehow my stability really, really improves. As always, please let us know in the comments below if you've tried version 2. Do you agree or disagree with me? I'm always curious. Please help others below by commenting. And lastly, I really hope this helps you make better decisions about what you put on your feet, because that's the whole reason we do this.